Alright, hello and welcome back to this video series about bouncing. This is going to be part 3, and to my knowledge we're talking about the most advanced bouncing techniques that there are right now, so I highly recommend you checking out part 1 and 2 first. In this video I will talk about some silent and muting techniques that will allow you to get better efficiency and more surprises out of your track. So it would be nice if there was a technique that can process effects without revealing the end product, like silent recording, but just for bounce. That way you could, for example, silent record a sound, bounce effects on the recorded sound, perhaps with replace one bouncing, and then do a totally unexpected drop with a crazy melody, a crazy rhythm, and so on. Also, you could, for example, do a short input sound and do a lot of sound processing while your track already plays, which then would save you a lot of silent recording at the start, where your track is basically just muted, and I think this time is always a bit awkward, so it would be nice to save this time. But this is easier said than done. Is there actually a way to accomplish this? Well, to test it out, I was playing around with some volume settings. So basically my first intuition was to turn down the fader, hoping that it would not influence the bounce, but unfortunately it does. So here on track 1 I have just some random thing. And for now everything is normal, we have just bounce activated, so let's just bounce that. You can hear it worked, but now let's turn the fader down. And well, unfortunately that didn't work. So yeah, basically the loop takes this into consideration. Similarly, simply reducing the track play level does also not work. And you can find this right here. Here you have the play level. This is also the same play level that you find if you go into the mixer settings. So if you go here, and there we already had it. We have 50, so this is the same setting. And well, I tried putting it down to 0, and you will see that this does also not work. So basically your loop takes all of your volume settings into consideration, which is actually a great feature because it means you can readjust your volume during or before the bounce. So that's actually pretty nice. But this also meant that for a while I thought silent bouncing was just completely impossible, but then I had an idea. So what if you play your sound with your usual volume settings, right? So fader up, then also let's go back to track 1 here, play level at 100, which is my usual setting. But then instead you just mute whatever sound is coming out of your loop and into your headphones or your speakers. And luckily there's actually a setting that accomplishes this. So if we go to menu, then output, routing, and track. So there's actually a couple of steps. You will see these settings for main, sub 1, sub 2. But the important thing here is the main, right? Which is your main output. And basically here you can mute and unmute one of your tracks. So right now, as you saw, my fader is up, my play level is at 100, so if I play this, everything works as expected, right? But now if I mute this, you can't hear it anymore, but it's still playing in the background. So I basically hoped that this perhaps would work with bounce, and it does. And to show you that it does work, well, let's just bounce it, right? Well, there you go. So yeah, I was very happy when I discovered this. So happy in fact that I used it inside my song. And I think this could be another good way to show you this technique. So I already showed you a little bit of my bassline creation in the last video. But now I can really show you how I actually create that bassline inside the track. Because I do it silently. And this is actually because I need 6 or more effects to create the bassline how I want it to sound. So here on Input FX Bank A, I have all my 4 effects that I need for creating the basic wave shape. So let's do just that. Alright, that was already the recording part, but as you could already hear, it sounds way too loud, way too harsh. So to make the sound a bit more quiet and to also make it sound a bit more like how I wanted to, I put some effects on it. And this is basically just a chorus and an EQ. And then it basically sounds like this. So much better. So basically what I do inside my song, it's a bit more complicated there, but the main gist of it is I go into the menu, which I showed you before. So menu, output, routing, track, and then I mute track 3, which is where the recorded bassline is at. Now it's completely muted, and then I simply, at the right time, put the effects on, and I bounce it onto track 1. And there we go. The bassline is ready for even more effects. So yeah, at first it seemed really great and the potential also seemed limitless. However, I was quickly humbled by a few annoyances. So unsurprisingly, there are no assigns for this. So this means, for example, if you do replace one bouncing on one of your tracks, and then at some point you're trying to unmute the track and actually show off what you had prepared, you will have to unmute this track in the actual song, so navigate through this menu again. And this was also the case for me, so I suggest if you're planning to use this technique, get comfortable with navigating to this menu quite fast. So one way to avoid this could actually be to have a dedicated track for your initial recordings and your initial bounces, right? And then do the last bounce, which you will then hear on another track. That way you wouldn't have to unmute one of your tracks, but obviously the main downside for this is that you will have to use an additional track, which you probably wouldn't have to. Another thing you will have to be careful of when using this technique is that when you mute one of your tracks, one or more, then your track FX inserts, which is what you see when you go to the effect and then go one to the left, right? So I talked about this before in part 1. If this insert is set to all, then this effect will not be applied to any of your tracks. So I can simply demonstrate this. You can see right here we have a low pass filter and this is set to all. And if we now go back and yeah, we can see right here all of our tracks are unmuted. So if I apply this filter, you can see it works as you expect it to. However, if I turn down one of these sliders, then this will not work anymore. Let's just do it with track 3, for example, so you can actually still hear the sound. And you can see right here, I didn't change anything with the knob, so the filter should be applied. And I can demonstrate this to you even more if I turn the knob. Doesn't matter what I do, we still have the low pass filter here, doesn't work. However, if I now change this to track 5, then this will work again. And you can see this right here, track is still muted, otherwise the silent bouncing wouldn't work at all, so that makes sense. But just be careful when using inserts on all. Because this seems oddly similar to the thing we discussed in part 1, it seems like this might also be a bug, so it would be great if that would be fixed. So yeah, as you can see, silent bouncing is a very useful technique, but it's not perfect. And I guess you can say that for bouncing in general. Because there seem to be little limitations and you can do these crazy signal chains like I talked about before, but in reality you probably won't have all 4 effects available, right? Sometimes you might have a low pass filter like I showed you right here, or a reverb which needs to be applied to one of your other tracks. So you can't actually do this crazy replace one bouncing one after another because you don't have enough effects at your disposal. But still, if you want to use techniques like silent bouncing for great sound design or more complicated techniques, which I recommend you do, then it gets even better because there's one more thing I can show you. So if you record stuff with your microphone, this is counted as a mic input, which makes a lot of sense, right? So if you go into the mixer here, you can see I have mic 2 disconnected because I don't use it, but microphone 1 is the one that I'm talking through, so obviously that will be activated. So now if I turn it down, You couldn't hear me, right? So that makes a lot of sense. Now bouncing isn't actually counted as a mic input, and this is very great. And this is because you can actually mute your microphone inside one of your tracks if you'd like. So for that, you basically go into loop, then one of your tracks. For me, this is track 3. And then you go all the way to the right and you can find these settings. And if you turn down your mic, this means your mic will not be recorded for that track. So let's just try that out. Test, test, test. That worked. And now again, you can still hear me, right? Test, test. But you can't hear it on the track. And this means that you could input your sound with a silent recording, for example, then mute the microphone on that track that you're bouncing on, and then bounce all of your stuff silently, but you can still sing over your entire stuff and it won't be recorded onto that track. And this can allow you to be even more efficient, because if you're planning to use silent recording and silent bouncing, you don't have to do it at the start anymore if you're planning to sing, because you can still do your silent bouncing inside the track and sing over it, and everything will still be fine. I should, however, mention that, of course, like many of the techniques I showed you in the last couple of videos, there is no assign for this one either, so could be annoying to use as well. Alright, it's post-editing me again. So I realized that I didn't actually show you a meaningful example of the mic muting technique, so I'm gonna do that right now. I think this is a good way to round out the video series on bouncing, because I can also show you a teaser of what I'm working on right now. Since these are my last few words on this video series, I want to say a huge thank you for watching, and also if you have any suggestions about future tutorials, please let me know in the comment section down below. As for the example, pay close attention to tracks 2 and 3 and how I'm able to bounce without my mic input going in. So as you can see right here, my microphone is muted for track 2. Also, I should mention that I'm only bouncing out track 3. I also want to apologize beforehand for my drums and for my singing, or humming rather, since I don't have any actual lyrics. I am working on it. Alright, let's do this. Whoa.